Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tabor Talk. So, I'm doing this one inside. It's been pretty cold here up in the Catskills the last couple of days. In fact, I think it's going to snow. So, here we are. Okay, getting right into this. A podcast I've talked about on occasion, not as frequently, obviously, as Joe Rogan, but Lex Fridman. His latest podcast, Simone Giertz, who is an engineer. Um, she's an AI guy, roboticist. She builds all these kind of neat gadgets. You could see some of her TED Talks on YouTube. So, anyway, highly recommend this podcast. She's really smart, funny, interesting, has some great stories. She's been through a lot of terrible things, tragic. She was actually had right after the TED Talk, you see the one that's up there. She right afterwards she was diagnosed with a brain tumor, like the size of a golf ball. So very sad. She's doing very well now. She's actually running like three companies. So good for her. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about today is a part of the interview near the end of this podcast. She talks about her love for MMA. Now, this is going back like 2010, so like 12 years ago. She was 20 years old. She's 32 now. She gets into it. Like she was hugely passionate and just would eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. And that's the way I was, right? I started martial arts when I was a kid. God, I just loved it for movies. I wanted to learn how to protect myself and all that. And then I got really into UFC MMA actually in my 40s, right? So interesting 30s, 40s. I watched all of the UFC, back in 1993 with the Gracies, whatever. So now it's not my favorite sport. I still watch it. I love it. I absolutely respect the skill and talent and athleticism. The guys are amazing. I've done several videos on this. Really toughest guys on planet Earth. They really are. And the athleticism is just off the charts, and they're all good. Most of them are really good guys. But the violence and the damage, the absolute damage that they're doing. Like you figure, like, hey man, like anyone, just name John Jones or George St. Pierre, all these amazing athletes. Like they have these sculpted bodies. They're genetic freaks, and yet you're damaging each other. Like God had given you this beautiful athletic body, and you're destroying it for what? For a cheap thrill? And like I said, I still love MMA, but as you get older, you'll see. If you get older, when you get sick, you kind of say, like, what the fuck are we doing to each other? In fact, I always bring up the example of Howard Cosell. Howard Cosell, I'm a boomer, okay, for the young people who don't know Howard Cosell, absolutely legendary broadcaster, the best, in my opinion, one of the best, icon. Muhammad Ali, Howard Cosell, they used to have a thing in the 60s and 70s. It was just absolute classic. Howard Cosell did all sports, but he was especially associated with boxing and especially with Muhammad Ali. And later in his life, he's like, wait a minute, what is this? What are we doing? And he got sick himself. He had sort of a neurological thing when he got older, like a Parkinson's symptoms, sort of. And he's like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, this is disgusting. And it was Larry Holmes, the opponent. Who was that opponent's name? It doesn't matter. You could look it up on the internet. But Holmes fucking pummeled him like for 14 rounds. Or he may have gone 15, but it wasn't even close. The fight should have been stopped in like round 2 or 3. And throughout the whole fight, the broadcast, Howard Cosell's, this is disgusting. Like, what are these human beings doing to each other? You're just damaging another opinion. He's like, for what? For what? Okay, my little prelude to this. I'm going to play a little clip of Simone Giertz, who talks about kind of the same thing I'm saying right now. Check this out. By the way, I have some copyright issues, working on that. So I'm just going to hold up my phone. I hope that doesn't annoy some people. I'll put the link in the comment section and when this starts, which is actually an hour and 40 minutes in. Watch this.
Fun. Funny enough, in my deep investigative journalistic research of you, says you used to be an MMA reporter. Yeah. How did that happen? How did you get into it? I was really into martial arts. I was like a huge UFC buff. I mean, this is 2010, maybe. You practice martial arts yourself? I did, yeah. I was mostly stand-up. I did I did a lot of Muay Thai and then some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and I was really, the thing is I get really intense about my hobbies and I was so into it. I was all in. Awesome. And I had worked a little bit as a journalist and I was like, oh, I should like do MMA reporting. And I emailed this MMA website in Sweden. I was like, hey, can I come and write for you? And they were like, oh, actually, we're going to an event in Gothenburg tomorrow. Do you want to come? Yeah.
Just kind of funny story.
Wow, this is
how rude they were.
11 p.m. at night, but sure, I'll come.
They thought she was
I went there to their office. I'd never really met them.
Sorry.
I'm like, this is kind of scary. Like, I'm a 20-year-old girl and going there in a group of men, with a group of men. And they were so rude. I went there and I was like, hey, what's up? And they were all kind of ignoring me and just like not looking at me or interacting with me.
I love the fighters, but I hate the people who run it. Like the fucking Dana Whites, the managers, they're all scumbags. And generalization, but like even when I put up video, any little tiny thing with UFC, they'll pull it. Everything is money. It's a dirty business, dirty. Fight game has always been that way. Boxing, historic mafia ties. So here you go. Let me continue on.
Until they realized that Simon was a girl, because we'd only talked over email. And they're like, oh, this guy named Simon is going to come. And then they were like, oh, fuck, Simon. It's actually Simone. Yeah. And it's a girl. So I kind of like slid into that in a very, very strange way. And I did that for a year. But then I got kicked out of an interview with Alexander Gustafsson.
Another interesting story.
And your pronunciation is so good. John Jones. And then I just kind of never went back and I was done with it. And
there's only a minute more. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'll put the link in because I know that's annoying with the phone for some, I guess. But this is so interesting. How sleazy the UFC could be. This is a different company, but you know what I mean. It's the same sort of world, universe.
No, I'm not allowed to do martial arts because of brain stuff. So I've kind of put all of that behind me. And it's interesting. It's like I definitely see the athleticism in it and the skill that goes into it. I think as the older I get, the more concerned I am about the health impacts of the sport and of the people who are practicing it on an elite level. And
exactly what I said.
I'm just not as, cannot as 100% just cheer as somebody beats somebody else 100%. Up to a pulp. Yeah, especially considering the effects it might have on the brain. Mm-hmm. May I ask why you got kicked out of the Gustafsson interview?
Okay,
this
is the story.
So it's embarrassing. What happened? No, it wasn't. I didn't intend to get kicked out. I didn't realize I was going to get kicked out. So it was, Alexander Gustafsson was going to fight John Jones. Yeah. And he was kind of like this golden boy in Sweden. Mm-hmm. And he had just come out to the press that he had actually been to jail for violent crimes. And all I asked was, what was the reason that you wanted to bring that forward now? Mm-hmm. And apparently that was completely like blacklisted, but I hadn't gotten briefed about it at all. And the head of PR of the UFC was just yelling at me and they kicked me out of Grand Hotel in Stockholm. And I immediately called my mom and I was like, Mom, you will not believe what just happened. I got kicked out of an interview at Grand Hotel because in the 90s, she got kicked out of an interview with Mel Gibson.
Oh, this is something else. Okay. And I'll put the whole thing in the comments section here. See what I mean? I've had some run-ins. I'm not going to talk about it now, but I want it to be... that's a long story. But I've had run-ins with people in the fight game in the UFC. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. I try to keep my videos under 10. I got like 16 seconds left. So there you go. I totally agree. It's like when I watch fighting now, and I still watch it, I love it. I'm very conflicted, and I'm really sickened by it. And like Joe Rogan, that's his favorite thing. I'm like Joe, and I know Joe's a good person inside, can be a dick, but how can he not be conflicted? These young men just destroying their bodies, and you find out when you get sick. Okay, good friends, good, and you get older, right? You just mature. I'm like, yeah, good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Peace, love, and understanding here in Tabor Talk. By the way, my Nets lost again. It was so hard to watch. They're down 2-0 to Philadelphia. They're not. I think they're going to get swept. Okay.